Okay, well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Education and Skills Service Transformation Committee. Welcome to people online and people in the room. We've got a new municipal year ahead of us. We've got a full and busy work plan today to decide upon, and that's the purpose of this first meeting. So can I start with agenda item number 1, apologies for absence. I've got Councillor Sandra Joy. Any others, Gar?
Bev Hopkins, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have item number 2, as ever, any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests? None. And the third point on the agenda is the terms of, no, it's not, it's the minutes of the last meeting, actually. Can we have a look at the minutes as they are attached? They're on page 1. There is one page there for the meeting held on Thursday, the 18th of May, which was the purpose of which was to elect me as the chair and Sam as the vice chair. So thank you, committee members, for your support for the year ahead. Are we content to approve and sign these minutes as a true record? Thank you, Lyndon. Thank you, Sam. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. And item number 4 on the agenda is the terms of reference. Now, what we also did, I asked Gareth to send out an extract from the corporate plan as well, which is really helpful. So that shows how we tie into the overarching corporate plan for Swansea Council 2023 to 2028. It's really important that we see this as a hand-in-glove approach. And so they were sent as background papers, members. So I hope that was helpful for you. When we look at agenda item number 4, this is the terms of reference for all of the council's service transformation committees. And I'm not going to go through them in detail. They were sent in advance. And of course, if you've got any questions on them, please indicate, put your hand up in the room or put your hand up virtually to ask your questions. But there's a couple of points that I would raise. The council for the year ahead have 5 service transformation committees. We are the Education and Skills STC. These meetings are on a 6-weekly basis this year. So it's important for us to bear in mind there's a longer term between the meetings, and that hopefully will allow more officer time and space to be able to do the necessary work, because you were really, I'm looking at the officers in the room here, people online. I know how much we pushed you last year, and I really thank you for that. And Sarah, with putting together the meeting at the time of annual leave as well, it was work well done in a short time space. So hopefully that will ease that pressure. Very importantly, under section A of the terms of reference, cabinet members are not eligible members of the service transformation committees, but they're always invited to attend. And we've been lucky to have the consistent attendance all the way through our committees in cabinet member Councillor Robert Smith. And I thank you for that, Robert. It's very much appreciated.
I think it's important for joined up thinking here that I'm here and working with the committee. And that's what I hope to do over the next year, as we did last year, that we are working in collaboration here. We're here to achieve the same goals, and look forward to working with you, Chair, and the other members.
Excellent. I echo that sentiment. Thank you, Robert. In B, section B, item number 4 under section A, chairs of the STCs will meet to coordinate agendas and work plans. So we're talking about horizontal thinking here as well. So we are pulling together in the same direction. We've done some of that previously as part of the former versions of this committee. We've done that. Under section B, the role of the STCs is to contribute to future policy. Very interestingly, I think, to consider mechanisms to encourage and enhance public participation. Now, that is something which is really quite interesting for us to look at as we go forward. Work with senior officers and cabinet members in a team Swansea approach. For me, and I think this is echoed by all committee members, the collaborative approach with officers, that dynamic environment that we've had in these committees, have really brought about some brilliant thinking and real progress. And we've been in a position at the end of recent years to take reports to cabinet, clear reports about future policy direction. So we will be producing a report at the end of this year. And under the terms of reference, we will be looking at 2 main agenda items, 2 agenda items. I can't even speak, can't say the word, transforming additional learning needs and right schools in right places. So we pass on to Helen as the director and some of her officers in a minute, but can I just say one or two other things, Helen, sorry. So this agenda has been discussed previously with the Cabinet member. Of course, it's again a hand-in-glove approach, and we will produce a report at the end of the year. Now, for me, the support of Gareth in democratic service, absolutely vital, and us having nominated officers as we go through. Without those two essential planks, we wouldn't get far at all. So that's all in the terms of reference. Very interested. I'm looking at Councillor Jones here in the relationship with scrutiny. That's really interesting. And I've had a conversation previously with Councillor Jones and Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams, actually, who chairs the Child and Family Social Services Committee, about stepping together and learning from all of the work that's going on. I don't know, I'm not allowed to be a member of Lyndon's scrutiny committee, but I wonder if I would be allowed to attend as an observer on occasion, if relevant. It's a question mark for me now that I discussed, just so I can go along and see what's going on. Robert, any views?
Well, I couldn't advise on that. I attend the meetings, as of course, but by invitation. You know, if the committee are happy to invite you.
Apologies. Yeah, there wouldn't be any objections, because I think joined up thinking is really important, and I think it's worked really well. And certainly because I was on this committee, it was quite handy when Robert chaired it before you. I think that would be helpful. And when we are looking into things, and I think the view that we've always taken in education scrutiny, that we're a critical friend, and I mean friend, because we want the best for education in Swansea, and we've always worked very hard to achieve that. And I think that was recognised by Estin when they did their report on education in Swansea. But I think it's really important that you get a team approach, and because we want the very best for pupils across Swansea.
Excellent. That's excellent. Thank you, Linda, and thank you, Robert. Mike?
Yeah, and also as well, I know Lyndon will bring a report to the Scrutiny Programme Board as well, which I know Vice Chair, and we're very supportive of all departments. So as a critical friend to see if we can see how the business of the council is actually being achieved. So we would, and obviously we would be there in that role as members of the Scrutiny Programme Board as well.
That's lovely. Thank you, Mike. And I've always taken an active interest, and of course I thoroughly enjoyed when I was able to be a member of the Scrutiny, Education Scrutiny and Child and Family Social Services. And I'm saying that because of the vulnerability aspect that we will be looking at as we go forward with this crossover. Always taken interest, but it'd be nice to actually be in the room as well on occasion. Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to add that there. On that point, can I... oh, sorry, who's got a hand up? Fiona Gordon, please.
Hi, sorry, I just wanted to check. Are we able, Chair? Are we able to sit on education?
We can't hear you, sorry.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Could Councillor Jardine and Councillor Pritchard try speaking as well?
Yeah, I can hear Fiona perfectly. I don't know
No,
if
we
you
can't
can hear
hear you,
me.
I'm afraid.
Oh,
and I can
we
hear
can hear-
Fiona as well.
It may be worth trying to leave and join again, but
Right.
we can't hear you. Obviously you can comment in the chat, but we can't hear you. Sorry.
Okay. Can we sit on ed scrutiny?
We can't hear you in the room, sorry.
Well.
I think she's sending a message.
Bear with us, people online. We're just looking at a few technical possibilities to get you up and running.
Is this any better for those in the room?
Yes,
Can you hear
yes,
me now?
Yes, that's absolutely spot on. That's excellent. So can we go back to Councillor Fiona Gordon, please?
Can you hear me now?
I think Gareth pushed something. I think Gareth weaved his magic. Yes, we can, Fiona. Please go
Right.
ahead.
Oh, sorry, thanks. I just wanted to check whether we're able to sit on education scrutiny as well as this committee.
I'd have to double check with him.
Well, in the terms of reference, I think that's fine. But because I'm an assistant to cabinet, then I'm not allowed to be on scrutiny. So I had to come off education scrutiny as a member and child and family scrutiny as a member. So my question was about whether I'm allowed to observe, which everybody thinks seems perfectly fine. Is that okay?
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Over to Helen Morgan-Rees, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of background as to why we've got two transformational goals in education, I think in terms of scene setting, I think it's important that we understand the context of these two quite meaty issues. The first being the need to transform additional learning needs. There is a specific need there to look at the landscape, where we've been and where we're heading to. So if you go back over, I would say, well, close to 30 years, you will see that we designed a system for specialist teaching facilities in Swansea. And had we had our time back, I think we would have designed them differently. A lot has changed since that time, and indeed the needs of learners across Swansea have changed. So there is a need to look at where we want to go in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of our specialist provision in Swansea. But we are focusing very much on our specialist teaching facilities and redesigning them differently. And Kate will tell you more about that in a minute. So Kate, as Head of Service for Vulnerable Learners, will have a service transformation vision that she would like to share with the committee today by means of background, and then that will determine the work programme that follows following today's meeting. The second transformational goal we have around having the right schools in the right places, again, retrospectively, if you look back at the last 10 to 20 years in Swansea, the school estate, the way schools are organised across the city and county, very much different to what they were like 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. So we need to have a forward-thinking vision of what that looks like for the next 5 to 10 years in Swansea. And there are regulatory requirements, indeed, in terms of planning school places that Kelly will tell you about. But really, the need to share that vision publicly is important, as you alluded to, Chair, in terms of engagement on both these transformational goals. How we engage with the public about our vision and plans for the future, absolutely key. But those two key areas are not going to be solved in a year. By the time we come to the end of this municipal year, hopefully the product will be that we've revised some plan or policy around these two key areas, but it doesn't mean that we will have accomplished our goals in a year, because they are very much medium to long-term goals. But I think they are the key areas, because the key here is the word transformation. Transformation does not happen in a year. It takes normally about 7 years. I think the theory and the evidence behind transformational change backs that up. So we have to consider that this is, you know, the initial steps towards a longer term goal. And that's the background I want to give you this afternoon.
That's excellent. That's really informative. Do you want to add anything, Councillor Smith, at this time?
Not at this juncture, but after the presentations, I'll come in if that's okay.
Lovely. Yes, thank you. And over to, we going to Kelly first? Kate first.
Thank you. Thanks. So if it's okay, I'll just share a bit more detail around the background to the transformation programme, particularly relating to additional learning needs, but specifically around what we're calling our Supporting Sufficient Specialist Places plan. And that's really about transforming the STF provision in Swansea, but also what comes before and after that to make sure that it sits really appropriately within a continuum in order to meet children's needs.
Sorry, could you just say that again? There's a lot of S's there. I tried to write it down. Thank you.
Supporting sufficient specialist places. It doesn't really trip off the tongue. I'm trying to find a better term for it, but it is, that's what it is. So, okay. So in terms of what we now know as our STF, Specialist Teaching Facilities, we've got 34 in Swansea that have been established over kind of between a probably 25-year period of time. And they've often been established in response to an emerging need in a particular area, or a school's had space to host, and we've recognised a need for that, and an STF has been established. They're local authority provisions, but they're hosted by schools, and they become very much part of those individual school communities. We have a level of confidence in the quality of those provisions. They're high quality provisions, and they're very valued by the schools that host them. They're valued by the local authority. We think they're valued by parents, carers, community and children as well. But what we have observed is that we haven't really got an overarching kind of strategy or coherence to all of those provisions. So we've got lots of really good stuff happening, and lots of stuff that's really important and valuable, and we want to retain and secure. But because it's been quite responsive in the way that it's been established over a period of time, we've got what's probably best described as a little bit of a geographical jumble in terms of where the provision is. And so what that doesn't help us to achieve is something that we would think is really important, which is for children to be able to receive, where they want it, the education they need within their local community. So for some children who have an additional learning need, because of the way that our provision has emerged over a period of time, there's a need for them to travel out of their local communities and to receive that really good quality specialist provision somewhere that isn't local to their homes. And that doesn't always feel as equitable as it can be. And that's something that we would like to try and address. We also know that over the kind of, intervening years between these provisions being established, that the needs of children in Swansea have changed quite significantly. So, for example, 10 years ago, the predominant need for children and young people with additional learning needs was around speech, language and communication. What we're seeing now is a national increase in children with a diagnosis of autism or ADHD, and we haven't got enough provision always for those children where we want it to be, and so we need to make sure that we build in some flexibility into our systems to make sure that we can respond to need as it changes, rather than just kind of establish something for what we need now and then find perhaps in a few years' time we need to flex and amend it again. So we want to build that kind of responsive flexibility into the system. You may also be aware that there's been a really important piece of legislation in relation to additional learning needs, which is 2018 Additional Learning Needs and Education Tribunal Act. And that's a transformational piece of legislation. We've been working quite hard on a transformational programme within the Directorate to support schools, who have also been working tremendously hard to get their own provision in line with the Act. One of the things that the Act is really clear about is that learner-centred provision within local communities wherever possible, within mainstream schools wherever possible, is really key and really important. And we see this transformational programme around the specialist provision as being a kind of, it goes hand in hand with that, and it's really critical that we develop this transformation programme now to support the requirements of the Act, and also because we think it's the right thing to do for children and young people. It will give them the right provision in the right places. We know that mainstream schools can offer a lot. And this is really about developing that inclusion focus, that inclusion approach across all of our schools, supporting them to do that while recognising that there will always be a need for specialist provision. And when that is needed, it should be available wherever possible, locally and within communities. So in terms of what the transformation programme is, really, it's about kind of resetting and rebalancing. We're looking at getting the right number of places in the right geographical places. We talk very much about community rather than cluster. We don't want to restrict people by their address. We want to keep that parental choice, within that. And, absolutely people can choose to go to a different area if that's their preference, but they should always be that right to that education within your own community, whatever your additional learning need might be. So we want to support every school to meet every child's needs wherever possible, while recognising, there will always be a need for specialist places. So we need to retain, potentially expand our specialist offer. And the bit that's kind of really important to us as well in this programme is that we don't disrupt any child's education. So we know we're transforming our services, but we also need to make sure that we offer that stability and consistency for children who are already receiving education through an existing specialist teaching facility. So in terms of kind of how we're doing it, we've undertaken, we're about 3 years into the programme now. So the first kind of year and a half was very exploratory. So we undertook quite an extensive period of collaboration and co-design with some key partners. So we had input from, for example, schools, our colleagues in the local health board, from our Swansea Parent Carer Forum, colleagues in social services, child and family services. And through that process, we agreed some key principles that would underpin all of the work that we were doing, and they were quite aspirational principles around, what we thought was absolutely kind of critical to achieve for children and young people. We're just coming to the end this academic year of what we called our kind of developmental phase 1. So that's been about working with 4 clusters of schools to try and transfer those aspirational principles into something that is quite tangible and operationally deliverable. So we're kind of coming to the end of that process, and we're beginning to draw together now a picture of what we think this provision will look like going forward. And then in terms of our next steps, really, it's about how we can develop those work streams to take forward that vision, how we can seek kind of, funding opportunities, support that financially, because we know the current budget challenges and how difficult that is. So this, we need to think about how we're going to achieve what we want to achieve. We want to roll this out, the thinking from the development phases to the rest of the clusters in Swansea, so they are fully involved, included, and aware of what our plans are. And then just kind of, I suppose, to conclude, if it's helpful, some of the key themes that have come out of the work so far in terms of what we're looking at is an approach that is truly inclusive. So that offers that inclusion at every stage of the continuum of support, that's got a community basis that enables children and young people to have that sense of belonging to their communities, focusing wherever we can on prevention and also the earliest level of intervention, although recognising, of course, that for some children there will always need to be that specialist provision as well. We know that when we do need specialist provision, it needs to be available at the right time and in the right place. And we also know that what we need to do is to ensure that we embed across the whole development some quality assurance and consistency in terms of our approach, which we review regularly, and that kind of regular review reconsideration is part of the kind of everyday way of monitoring this, so that we can continue to keep it fresh and respond to needs.
That's really helpful. That is very thorough and very detailed, more detail than I was expecting in the first meeting, and I'm delighted to hear it. Really, one of my concerns was we got 2 huge and meaty agenda items. How on earth are we going to break them down? Councillor Smith.
Yeah, can I thank Kate for that presentation, because I think she's outlined very thoroughly. What I was hoping the committee will consider in the next year. I'd like to pay tribute to the work that's gone into implementing and transforming the way we respond to additional learning needs in response to the ALN Act. I know the huge amount of work that our officers have led in that. It's about building capacity. It's about ensuring that all our schools have the capacity. Because don't forget, it's not about STFs as an alternative to school. All our schools are responsible for meeting the needs of all the children on roll. And as Kate said, it's about making sure that we have the right provision, that we are meeting the current additional needs, and that where STF places are required, that we have the right places, that we have the right expertise, but also that ensuring that that is delivered across the whole of Swansea, and that children are able to access the services in their home community if that's what they choose. So I think it's about getting that balance right and building that capacity and building the capacity across the whole system is going to be crucial moving forward.
Thank you, Robert. Councillor White, Mike.
Yes, thanks, Art. Yeah, can I just say, unfortunately, we've got an STF within our supports our feeders, so, they say couple catchment, but obviously, we don't know whether additional funding will come through now to improve some of the schools that are on the list that need new areas, need new schools. But is there any way that as these provisions could be carried out actually in schools? Because I'm thinking if there are council community buildings within a community where you feel there's a need to perhaps provide the service, would that be an option? To sort of break that to fill that gap until we can get perhaps a new school built for that community.
Okay.
Obviously, it's obviously oriented to keeping the children in the community and what the parents want the children to stay in the community. But whether that could be an option that could be that we could be looked at, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Okay.
So our approach has been very much about how we include all children within those school communities. So we wouldn't view necessarily children who might need access to a specialist teaching facility as being different from that school community. What we would rather do is kind of look at solutions that supports them within the existing school community and buildings. Then recognise probably when Kelly picks up on her item, I think that the plans, what we will do in terms of transforming the school estate are different, and it's critical that all children with additional learning needs are kind of included as part of that consideration, and that provision for children with additional learning needs is kind of embedded throughout the whole school continuum of support. So whether that's in their kind of mainstream classroom, some additional enhanced provision that may be put in place, or an STF, it would exist as a kind of critical part of that school community.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillor Jardine. Sorry, Lyndon.
Thanks, Chair. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Kate for the report, which has been, as everyone has said so far. But I was wondering, Kate, you talked about flexibility and need to change, and I understand where you're going with that, and about the children being part of the community. So I take it that means that, which you've sort of just explained, all schools, if possible, will facilitate a child if the parents are keen for them to stay in the community. Because when we talk about the community, it's not just about the outside community, but when children go to a school far away, for example, I'm governor of a school, and we have children from the other side of Swansea. So they don't have any friends really where they live. And so they're not part of their community, so to speak, which I gather is quite high on your agenda for the future, that they are part of the community. So it brought me to the question that, does that mean the school community, we will facilitate wherever possible that there's room in the schools? Because I know that wouldn't be possible for every child, but for some extra needs, that might be. I'm not sure if I've explained that very well, but.
No,
okay.
you have. If I can understand it, Yvonne, you've explained it well. Kate?
Yeah, no, you did explain it well. That's exactly what we're trying to achieve, really. So at the moment, we know for some children, in order for them to be able to access the support they need, they have to travel some distance and attend a school that is not within their near their home area, within their local community. So, for example, there's opportunities that are afforded to other children, like the opportunities to play out after school or be part of local clubs and so on, aren't there for children who have additional learning needs and then have to travel. So we want to put that kind of equity back in place, and to make sure that wherever possible, and you know, it's not going to be possible in every case, and it's about this is really about individuals as well, and viewing each child's opportunity based on their own individual need, what it looks like, but offering those opportunities in the same way to every child wherever we can do. And that will be about supporting schools to create some additional resource spaces and so on. And it's about how we kind of reset and rebalance that to make sure that we get that equity of offer across the whole county.
That's lovely. Thanks,
Okay,
Kate.
thanks very much.
Councillor Jones in the room?
Great, thank you, and thanks to Kate as well. You know, really informative actually, to show what, you know, what the plan is and what we're doing. Do we actually have we got children going to facilities outside the county? Because I can remember visiting a number of years ago, albeit the Amelia Trust in the Vale of Glamorgan, which was extremely good, I have to say. But do we have children going to that sort of facility away from here?
Yeah, in some instances, we do have a small number of children who attend specialist provision outside of Swansea. That would mainly be children who would kind of meet more of a special school profile. And obviously what we would like to do is, wherever possible, again, try and make sure that the provision that we have in Swansea can serve our, you know, local families and communities. So because for children to remain at home with their parents and carers is the priority, you know, for us. So yes, we do. And, you know, I would imagine that may continue for some children. It may be exactly what they need, but we need to make sure that we're comfortable and confident that we can meet the offer in Swansea locally as well, if that's the desire.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kate. And Councillor Fiona Gordon.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, Kate, I didn't quite hear. You said the children that tend to go to a special setting out of county tend to meet which profile was it? Behaviour.
More of a special school profile. So children who might need have a very special bespoke ALN then that needs a very specialist provision.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Kate, for the presentation. I just wanted to well, my first query was going to be about building capacity in mainstream schools, but I know the current member made reference to that, and that's obviously you know, part of your focus is to ensure that schools continue to feel that they are places that meet all those additional learning needs, and that it's not a case of, you know, they have to go off to a unit. Although, as you say, there are, you know, for some cases that is, you know, the right place. I assume that's decided by panel, yeah, by an inclusion panel, or is that right?
Yeah, additional learning needs panel, yeah.
Okay, thanks. But I just wondered about the question of capacity. So will you be making more provision, more spaces available? And because, you know, as you said, you know, to meet the demands of the increasing ASD profile that's presenting. And if you open more spaces, you know, we tend to sort of know historically that these spaces will be filled. And I also wanted to know about how you plan going forward. You know, you can plan to a certain extent from early years information that comes through from your early years lead ALN officer and so on. But also, so you can have some sort of idea of projected numbers going forward. For secondary places, you can have them from the primary settings. But do you find that there are lots of people moving into the county that you had not planned for, and you have to sort of rearrange your plans all of a sudden. So there's a few questions in there. Sorry.
That's okay. I think I wrote most of them down. Do you want me?
Yeah. If you can we just clarify? One of my struggles with education is all the acronyms, but ASD, autistic spectrum disorder. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, please, Kate, carry on.
Yeah, thanks. So I think the first question was around issues of kind of capacity and increasing numbers. What we know at the moment is we've got broadly the correct number of places for specialist teaching facility space, but we haven't got them in the right places or in the right designation. So our STFs have got like certain designations around needs that they would meet. So for example, speech, language and communication, we've got some surplus places there now because those needs are not so prevalent, but we haven't got enough places for children with a diagnosis of autism. So part of this is about kind of resetting and rebalancing those places. What we also want to do as part of the work around, we can't just do that in isolation, because part of building that capacity is making sure that the offer that our schools can make to all children is enhanced and is as strong as possible in terms of support for additional learning needs. So that's linked very much to the work we're doing around the ALNET transformation, the work around the ACT. We've got an extensive kind of training programme for schools. We've been able to use some grant funding that we had from Welsh Government to support schools to put in some additional facilities for children with additional learning needs across the whole of Swansea. Every school's had access to that. And we've got a team of specialists who are working with the schools to really make sure that universal offer is as strong as it possibly can be. And that's very much part of this work, because unless that underpinning offer is right, we're not going to use our places appropriately. We need to have the children who need the places to have access to them. But we need to know that when they are being placed in those provisions, it's because it's absolutely the right thing to happen at the right time. In terms of our planning, so we do have, obviously, we got some kind of predicted numbers coming through in our school planning for places and so on. We see trends in terms of additional learning needs. We've got strong links with our early years and health colleagues, health visitors and so on. So we know now, for example, what the level of need is likely to be like in 3-4 years time as children now who are just in their infancy really are coming through. So we know from that information. You're right, we do also have a high number of children moving into Swansea. It's an area with high kind of mobility. And so that's something that we can't always plan for, but we try our best. We know one thing we do know is we know it's going to happen. So, that helps us to be aware of it. But one of the other bits that's really critical about this is incorporating some flexibility into our provisions so that we don't get tied down by a label above a door. Rather, we can, when we see a changing need, an emerging need, we can respond appropriately and quickly.
That's lovely. Thank you, Kate. Something's gone in my throat here. Right, okay, so are we content on that one there? That was very thorough, very detailed, and I think that gives us a flying start, really. That's what it feels like to me. That's brilliant. And can we move now on to the second key area of concern, please?
Yeah, so we're looking at having the right schools and in the right places. And just to give a bit of context, at the moment, we've got 93 schools in Swansea. We've got 77 primary, 14 secondary and 2 special schools. So we do have a duty to monitor the provision that we've got to make those places keep those places under review. And that's within the context of us having a falling birth rate within Swansea. However, as Kate has mentioned as well, we do get a lot of inward migration. And we've noticed in particular in the last year or so, a lot of university, children of university students coming in and hospital workers. In particular from Nigeria, we've had changes to the visas there. So there's a lot of change, in our cohort. We also have noticed over the years a moving trend from English medium to Welsh medium, and of course we've approved as a council our WESP, our Welsh and Education Strategical Plan. So we have a duty now to support that plan and obviously promote then more Welsh medium places within Swansea. So it's a change in cohort. We also need to consider the condition of some of our buildings. We do have a lot of schools that are, old, and we, I don't know if you're aware of the condition surveys that we do. So we rank the schools from A to D. So we do always try and address the ones that are sort of like in a C category. We're looking at really to try and push those up. And suitability of buildings is also an issue for us. So if you consider some of our older Victorian buildings, are they accessible for our learners with additional learning needs? So there's a lot to think about there already. Also, if we think about home to school transport, we're aware that our budget is ever increasing on that element. Is there anything we can do to review, potentially catchment areas or anything else that we can do, not only to reduce the cost there, but obviously again you would provide places closer to somebody's home address. And something that is sort of a key priority from the Welsh Government, at least at the moment, that they promote is community focused schools. So that's where schools are open their doors and get the community in where they can, not necessarily just for lettings, but that stronger relationship between the community and the schools, which obviously requires the space to do that. So we do hold quite a lot of statistical information on our schools, and we usually reflect updates on that every year. Pupil projections, for example, we don't have a crystal ball, but we think we've got quite a good pupil projection formula at the moment. Things like number on roll in schools. We look at catchment areas. We look at for each school how many pupils from the catchment area attend that school and how many go to other schools. Is there a reason for that? Obviously, we do have faith schools, Welsh medium schools and English medium schools as an option. And obviously, like I mentioned, the school condition service that we do update every year as well. So there's a number of sort of groups, consultation groups that we've got within education and wider. The main one being our QED board, as we call it, Quality in Education Board, and we have representatives on that from corporate building, leisure, education and other areas. So we've got that wider view then of our stakeholders. So if you look at what we're trying to achieve, I suppose what we're looking at, as Helen mentioned earlier, is probably more of a sort of like a 10-year plan, really, of where we're going to go, considering all the data that we've got and all the information that we hold. If you look back 10 years from where we were, where we are now, our school stock is very different to what it was then. I made a note here since September 2012. We've changed 4 infant junior schools into all through primary schools, usually with a new build. We've created 1 new Welsh medium primary school. We have closed 2 small schools and moved pupils onto larger schools. We've had 6 new specialist teaching facilities, SCFs, and we've increased our special school places in one of our special schools. So there's been quite a lot of change in that period, and it's looking forward now to the next 10 years and what we can do there. We talked about consultation with learners and things, any changes that we do, we would consult with our learners, staff, governors, and wider stakeholders. We do have to consider things like the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and any school organisation proposals we do. We have to do Welsh medium impact assessments and community impact assessments. I suppose risks if we don't go ahead and change the stock that we've got. We are going to end up with surplus places in some of our schools. There is a price tag over those surplus places. We mentioned accessibility. Some of our schools do need to be adapted so that they are accessible to all. And of course, with my sort of revenue funding hat on, then the surplus places costing money, and the number of schools that we've got if our pupil population is dropping. I talk about our jam being spread, more thinly over the schools that we've got. So yeah, I think what I'm looking for really is a sort of that 10-year plan going forwards, yeah, bearing in mind as well size of teams that we've got available. So within education, there are 2 teams really that deal with school organisation, the fund and information team. There's 4 members of staff in that team dealing with school organisation, all the school funding, grants, school uniform grants, free school meals, etc. And then we've got our capital team. Then there's we've counted up 8.5 members of staff within that team, and they deal with all the capital projects that we're dealing with at the moment. You'd be aware of the Sustainable Communities for Learning project. This is where we get match-funded grant from the Welsh Government to update our school buildings, and we've done quite well with that. We've had £150 million worth of funding within our Ban B programme, which is coming towards the sort of tail end then. So that's about it really for me.
What an understatement. That's about it from me. Wow, Can I ask Councillor Smith, Robert, please?
Yeah, can I thank Kelly again for her presentation this afternoon? And yes, what she said right at the end there, when you look at the size of the teams we've got and what's being delivered, and we are delivering, and I think we had a presentation, I think it was in the scrutiny committee by Louise Herbert Evans, where we're talking about some very complex projects being delivered. And when you look at the size of the team, it is a tribute to them that they're able to deliver what they have been able to do and are continuing to do. But I think what this gives us an opportunity to do, we collect, as Kelly said, there's a lot of evidence, a lot of surveys that are collected, a lot of evidence that's gathered periodically and systematically by the council. And I think this is an opportunity to look at that in the round and see what does this mean. So the priority being the right school. Now we know the curriculum is changing, society's needs are changing, society's expectations are changing. The kind of provision which we as a council and the public sector more broadly is required to deliver is evolving, and I think we need to look at that. And it's also an opportunity perhaps to look at some of the issues we have with those schools. We know that there are design faults with certain schools. Kelly's mentioned Victorian schools, and one of the things that comes to mind there is adaptability. But also we've got to look at schools that were built in a much later era, how energy efficient they are. We know that there were schools that were built in the 60s and 70s. They've been criticised for various design faults, and it's an opportunity to look at things in the round and balance the different factors that are affecting the efficiency of our schools. But as I said, it's more than just about buildings. It's about as much about what goes on inside the buildings. And are our buildings fit for purpose? Are they supporting that work? And how we can move forward, making sure that there's principles of equity across the whole of Swansea, be that community based, be that language medium, or be that the specific needs of different children. So I think all of those factors need to be considered, and I think it's an opportune moment for the committee to look at it.
Thank you very much, Robert. Thank you very much, Kelly and Kate and Helen, for great detail in this first meeting. Now that really sets the tone for me. If we've got no other questions on the work plan discussion, I got out of the car and I think the blossom of the tree really got me as I walked in. I could feel my hay fever kicking in here. We've got Councillor Mike White, please.
Yeah, can I, in regards to the capital side of the department, you mentioned obviously Victorian schools. Governor of one of Victorian school, Swansea, and we find it when we get a request for people, because obviously that we got the adaptations we got to put in because of the layout and the school, because it's a very real school, about as well complying with the DDA Act. Yeah. Now, is there a specialised budget solely set aside for that, to take that into consideration?
So we do have a capital budget for educational schools every year, and part of that is set aside for adaptations for additional learning needs. So I think I'm aware the request you're talking about here, so I think they are looking at that one as well coming through, but it is obviously a limited pot of money, and with certain schools there is sort of only so much you can do, and it can be quite costly to make those adaptations and for learners. So ideally what you want is a school that's accessible to all, isn't it?
Yeah, as I say, because there are rulings around the DDA and everything, you've got to make sure that everything is in place, isn't it?
I think, Kelly, you're going to hear from Councillor White after this meeting. I can see the emails come in, but before he gets home, probably. So I can't see anyone indicate, or Sam is indicating online. Councillor Pritchard, sorry, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I kept dropping out of the meeting, so I'm on my phone now, but hopefully you can hear me still.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
There we go. Yeah, I would just like to comment that as a chair of governors of a school which isn't ideal for in terms of the learning needs, I know that there are a lot of schools which are doing fantastic work and actually achieving fantastic learning outcomes as well for pupils. And so I think this is actually a really helpful avenue to consider, because there's a lot of schools which are thriving despite of some of their building facilities, not because of. And so I think this could be a really helpful way to look at. And I'm sure we all know, those of us who are governors, we all know how tight school budgets are. So looking at things like energy efficiency, etc., I think will make a huge difference ultimately to the learning outcomes of the pupils. So I think this has been a really helpful introduction to this topic. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Sam.
I'm going to make the point, because people have heard me make it before. We blame the Victorians for a lot of things. But it wasn't just the Victorians. We've got a legacy from the Victorians that's both positive and negative, plus the subsequent generations. So it's not just about Victorian schools. It's about things that were built a long time after that as well, that need to be borne in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I liked about Sam's comment there was the thriving despite. It shows the tenacity, capability that we got in our 93 Swansea schools, which is really incredible, isn't it? In the paid teams and the unpaid volunteers and the governing bodies. I mean, they're all in it together. So I can't see anyone indicating online. We're okay in the room here, so we can move on from the work plan discussion there. To the date and time of our meetings. So we're on page 6 there. We've got the date and the time of future meetings. And I think Gareth has laid them all out and sent out invitations to all of them. Helen?
Thank you, Chair. Just reflecting on the 6-weekly cycle for this particular committee. Obviously, you've heard the context behind these transformational goals, and they're quite broad and meaty items. So in the 7 future meetings we've got together for this municipal year, I think if the committee does agree to consider both of these transformational goals, I think we need to apportion time for each of those goals. So I would suggest that 3 meetings to consider Kate's item and 3 meetings to consider Kelly's, and then a 7th meeting to draw conclusions, really, but maybe focusing as well on what we want to achieve by the end of it. In terms of Kelly's area, in terms of setting out possibly a refreshed school organisation plan, that would be a project that's discernible and tangible, and we could aim towards having that school organisation plan steered forward. I think the case for change and the drivers for change are clear to the committee, but anything that enables that change to happen effectively is going to be useful to stakeholders, to the public and to our schools. So I think for Kelly's area, a plan would be appropriate. Just this is a suggestion for you to consider.
Oh, of course it is. I know. Yes, go on.
And then for Kate's area, I'm not entirely sure yet what that could look like, but the level of engagement required with stakeholders for this kind of transformational change is significant. So maybe having a document that is a key and clear document for all stakeholders to know what it is we're trying to change and why would be a useful project from this committee to work on together.
Thank you, Helen. I was scribbling away then. Absolutely makes sense to me. My question, you knew it was coming, was how do we structure as we go forward? And for me, 3 meetings to focus on one key objective, 3 for another, and then 1 mop up at the end to produce the STC report for Cabinet covering those 2 areas. It sounds like an eminently sensible way forward. Committee members, are we content? I can see nodding in the room. Lyndon?
The only thought I had was, when we've done each one, would it be worth doing a report to Cabinet on each section, if you like, rather than waiting till the end and do one report?
I'm not sure. I think that in the terms of reference, there's reference to the service transformation report, the transformation report at the end, and I'm assuming the report would have 2 distinct parts to it relating to the objectives. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Is that okay? Does that make sense, Helen?
Yeah, to allow work to happen in the background. Given the 6-weekly cycle, you could alternate between 3 topics, so that would give us a 12-week cycle then to each topic to bring back something and to produce something on the back of each of those meetings. So I think, does that make sense in terms of Kelly not coming back, you know, for the next 3 meetings? It'll be Kelly, then Kate, Kelly, then Kate.
Yeah, it really does make sense. And there's one thing I'd ask officers to bear in mind, and I know the time is huge, but it's in the terms of reference, workshops. So if you found yourself in a position where you thought, you know, this is really getting quite tough, then perhaps you could ask the committee if we can organise a workshop to target a specific area to add value, if that crops up for you. Would that make sense, committee? Okay. Oh, did you, Mike, really? Oh, well done. Good. Okay, so that sounds to me like a very full and detailed meeting. And can I ask everyone concluding comments? Are we content? And I think we are nodding heads. And online,
I
Yvonne,
am.
Fiona,
Yes, I
Sam,
am
oh,
content.
we're all okay. That's excellent. I'm really pleased with that. Thank you all very, very much for your contributions. And the next meeting will be held on Wednesday, the 26th of July at 4:00. And on that point, I will close the meeting.
Chair,
Thank
sorry,
you all.
just-
Oh, go on,
just
Gareth.
double check if committee's happy to continue to meet at 4:00. That's what item 6 is on the agenda.
Oh, there we are. There's a data time of meetings. I'd made that assumption because we've gone through it thoroughly before and I assumed it was okay. Do apologise. Are we content at 4:00 on a Wednesday, everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
Yeah,
we
I'm
are.
happy, Chair.
Yes.
There we are. That's
Okay.
brilliant. Thank you, Gareth. Okay, everyone, I close the meeting on that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.